Joining us now, the right man on the left coast, James Herson, Newsmax insider, and of course the author of the Left Coast Report. James, thank you for being with us. We always appreciate your input these days.
Well, it's great to be with you. Champagne wishes and caviar dreams from Hollywood.
And you know what's great, James? The guy who used to say that, our good friend on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, occasionally would join us beachside in those Speedos. And you're not doing that. You're dressed in the... Robin Leach would be out on the beach in Speedos. An image. Anyway, but let's get back to the serious talk here. Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz have that letter where they write in part that, quote, Gaza is living through horror these days, besieged and attacked by land, sea, and air. Palestinians' homes are being destroyed and they're being denied water, electricity, and free movement while the international community does nothing. We heard the comment of the Relativity Media CEO, but why hasn't Hollywood been more vocal in condemning those comments?
You know, it's somewhat of a mystery. I have my theories. Haim Saban, who's an entrepreneur in Hollywood, said he can't figure it out. He's one of the executives in Hollywood. He's trying to get people to speak out, and he's trying to get them to speak out in support of Israel. Perhaps the most unusual silence is coming from Steven Spielberg, who heads a foundation, the Shoah Foundation, which ostensibly exists to raise awareness about anti-Semitism. And in viewing the media coverage of the Israel-Gaza conflict, in some cases, one could say not only is it biased, it may well be anti-Semitic, and his silence is baffling. The Hollywood Reporter had a piece that said, basically, you can't talk about this subject. But it's clear, one thing is clear, JD, Hollywood is divided. And there's two different sort of classes in Hollywood, really. The people that we're used to seeing, you know, in front of the cameras are one class of Hollywood, but there's some very savvy, very insecure business executives that run that town. And those executives on background are expressing dismay at what Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem did. And some of them are saying, just like Ryan Kavanaugh of Relativity said, they're not sure that they'll ever work with them again. And so it could very well be that some of the people that have been vocal and kind of ignorantly vocal without knowing all the facts, calling what Israel did genocide, using this sort of exaggerated terminology, their careers may suffer in the future.
Well, and that gets to the whole point here now. Those executives going on background, you're not the only guy hearing this, and suddenly stories have arisen, perhaps a potential blacklist. I mean, reports, again, on background, off the record, one producer says flat out he will not work with Penelope Cruz again. He will not hire her. Will we see a new blacklist?
I don't think we'll see, you know, a blacklist not nearly as formidable as the blacklist that already exists for conservatives and people of faith. But I think we will see a segment of Hollywood, silent segment, if you will, of executives like Ryan Kavanaugh, who are going to be reluctant to work with some of the people that have sort of, in a reactionary way, I think, and to give them, you know, the benefit of the doubt, I think in the case of Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem issued a statement saying, we really are not experts in the Middle East. And I think so many of the entertainment folks get their information from CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, and the metropolitan newspapers, that for them to come to the conclusion and have compassion for the civilian casualties is a natural consequence of that. So, but so many of them are ill-informed. Now, Jon Voight, Oscar winner and conservative and courageous conservative in Hollywood, wrote an open letter condemning that. And so he's one that's now perhaps in the good graces of a segment of Hollywood. See, the reason Hollywood is divided is because they are a politically correct town and they can't figure out what to do, because it appears as though the politically correct thing to do, at least if you listen to John Kerry off mic, you listen to many prominent Democrats, is to condemn Israel.
And that condemnation of Israel, will it pick up again now that the fight is back on?
Well, I think it will in some quarters, no question about it, because as long as the press continues to leave out this important information that Hamas is forcing people, civilians, to be in harm's way after Israel warns them that this is where we're going to attack, please vacate, this, allow the civilians to evacuate. As long as those facts are left out of the reporting, I think we're going to have people voicing condemnation of Israel, because this is a public relations game that Hamas is playing very formidably with pictures, and with pictures that pull at people's heartstrings. And if they don't know all the facts, they're going to come to the conclusion, as so many have, that this is it, that Israel's the bad guy, not knowing about the tunnels, not knowing about the rockets, and most of all, not knowing about civilians forced at gunpoint to stay in harm's way.
James Herson, the right man on the left coast. We appreciate your perspective on this and look forward to our next visit.
Well, thanks for having me, JD. You have a wonderful weekend.
Sure will, pal. You too. 1972, the Munich Olympics. Israeli athletes attacked and killed, but the site of a triumph for an American. Here's our American moment.
I'm going to tell you something. They're going to call you chicken if you don't swim. You are the world record holder. And the premier Olympic swimming event is the 100 freestyle.
With those words from his coach, Olympic history was made. Born Mark Andrew Spitz in the little town of Modesto, California, the future Olympian record holder began his swimming career at the age of 2 in the Hawaiian waters of Waikiki Beach. 4 years later, Mark and his family moved to Sacramento, California, and by age 10, he held 17 national age group records and 1 world record. But the best was yet to come. After a disappointing performance at the 1968 Olympics, the Shark, as nicknamed by his teammates, returned to the Olympic Games in 1972, determined to do better. As history records, at the 20th Olympiad, Mark Spitz won 7 gold medals and set 7 world records in the process. But it almost didn't happen. After winning his 5th gold medal, the Olympic champion faced his toughest competitor, Australian Michael Wendon, in what Spitz had always considered his toughest race, the 100-meter freestyle. He thought seriously of withdrawing from the biggest race of his career. But with encouragement from his coach, Spitz reconsidered and changed history. Spitz's achievement gave America a boost internationally as the nation suffered in global public opinion from its long war in Vietnam. And Spitz's victory in the sports arena was especially gratifying. As an American Jew, his victories cast a powerful shadow over the Palestinian Liberation Organization's Munich terrorism, when 11 Israeli athletes were held hostage and eventually murdered by the group belonging to the Black September organization. Despite the horrors and his own nail-biting competition, Mark Spitz always maintained his sense of humor. The night before competition was to begin, he was asked by a Russian reporter why he wore a mustache. Although he had planned to shave it that very night, he replied,
I said, no, it doesn't slow me down. I said, it deflects the water away from my mouth. It allows my head to get a lot lower and more streamlined, my behind actually up. And so that's why I was able to break the world record at the Olympic trials in Chicago 3 weeks before. The guy looked at me and hesitated, and then he translated as fast as he could into Russian. All male Russian swimmers the next year had a mustache.
For Newsmax TV, I'm Bill Curtis, and this is an American Moment.